Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Yada Yahowah Radio. I'm your host this evening, and I'm here with our longtime co-host, Kirk. An update of the books, Yada has completed Chapter 3 of Goddamn Religion 5, and he has moved on to Chapter 4, which he conveyed is going to be a little difficult because he's translating the 6th Siratin, which is his funny pun on the rotten surahs. Yeah. So while he's writing Volume 5, please take the time to check out Volume 4 on the bookshelf at yadayah.com. So in the news this week, the IDF targeted a school yesterday, Hamas. IDF targeted a school yesterday in Gaza run by the UN, in which Israeli intelligence confidently placed 30 Hamas fighters. And, of course, the Hamas propaganda department, with their imaginary Ministry of Health and Media, which doesn't exist, is now self-reporting 40 civilian casualties, including women and children. And what's stunning about that is that last month, the UN quietly updated its Gaza casualty figures, halving the number of women and children that Hamas had reported were killed by the IDF since October 7th. So, it's really shameless. Mm-hmm. Any reporter or news agency who relies on a terrorist organization such as Hamas to accurately self-report is willfully choosing to ignore the reality that they are shamelessly promoting propaganda by a terrorist group. The U.S. is pushing for Israel to implement a two-state solution, putting us right on track for the fulfillment of Shabuw'ah in 2026. Now, before Israel accepts such a deal, they have made it clear they intend to destroy Hamas first. So I do think we've got a couple more years before this deal will be accepted by Israel. And they will be under immense pressure at that point because the entire world will have turned against them. Yeah. Initially, when I was calculating Shabuw'ah's fulfillment, I was convinced that this year, which is 2024, was eligible, and 2026 was my second choice. But after talking a few weeks ago with Yada on this podcast, he made some excellent points that for Yahweh to be pleased with what we have done, and he said he would be. Religion cannot be found in the nest, so we need time to update the nest, which Yada estimates will take us nearly the end of 2 years to accomplish. So you guys get ready. While things are getting bad, they are going to get much worse. Mm-hmm. And we just need to trust that Yahweh is going to guide us. So for now, Israel's campaign in Rafah is ongoing, and the world is getting more and more hostile to Israel and Jews around the world. And according to Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is this agency that helps Jews make Aliyah, there's been a 142% increase in applications by Jews abroad to return to Israel since October 7th. And we hope that there will soon be more because Israel will be the only safe place left for Jews to live in the entire world. And even there, the only safety for them will be knowing and returning to Yahweh. So this brings me to a question I've been asked a lot lately. What can the covenant family do to help? And I'm going to share a Mashal with you before we get into what Kirk has for us, because it's not only related to the question, it describes how the covenant family undertakes this effort prior to the fulfillment of Shabuw'ah. So this is Mashal 6, verse 6. The habitually inactive and lethargic, as Sel, the lazy bones who are sluggish or sedentary, lacking discipline, ambition, and remorsefulness, should see, observing, and examining the movement of the ant, Namala, the insect known for its industrious nature, from Namal to be circumcised. So observe her ways and be wise. And the covenant family are the ant of this proverb. We are the industrious insect from Namal to be circumcised. This is an accurate description of the covenant family. If you are not covenant and you are feeling too lazy, too tired to do the work, it bores you, if you don't want to research what we've shared, take warning, take heed that you should reconsider and observe what is being done here. Moving on to verse 7. Beneficially and from a relationship perspective, she has no leader or ruler, no commander or officer, no government or imposed authority. And she has no work foreman or public official, not even a clerk or a scribe, nor anyone claiming to be in charge or in control, especially not a lord who reigns over her. Now, that's excluding Kirk, who's going to get fired if he doesn't, do a good job. But the rest of us...
Isn't that interesting, though, about the ant? Wow.
Yeah, I think it is. And so this is the part that's related to Shabuw'ah, which is the theme of tonight's program. It says, this ant, she prepares her food in the summer, and she gathers in the harvest, storing it as her source of nourishment. And that is agar ba ha-katsir. She harvests the crop and brings it into the storehouse. Well, Shabuw'ah is the summer harvest, which we as worker ants are engaged to prepare for in advance. And there's tons of material to share. So that is what we really need. If you want to help us, if you want to help Yada, if you want to help Yahweh, get this material in front of his family, and he will appreciate you for it. Just do this knowing, this is the disclaimer, that you're not going to be popular. This is going to be rejected. Yada told us, or Yahweh told us that Yada would be rejected. But they have to get to know him before they can even reject him. And we're going to turn to Dabarym 4:30, which says, during the time of adversity and distress, all of these words will find you, especially in those last of days. And then you will return, and you will be restored forever and eternally to Yahweh, which is really good news for what we're doing as the ants.
Yes.
So moving on to Dabarym 29:22. So then the last generation, Hador ha-Akaron, those descendants dwelling at the end during the latter days, will make a profession and a promise. Your descendants, led along the correct path to receive the benefits of the relationship, will rise up and take a stand during a time long distant from yours. Because the Nakri, the observant and responsive foreigner, from a faraway place and a distant time will come. Then they will witness that which is plaguing this land, the evil, disease, and overall impairment, necessitating intercession to resolve the sickness which grieves Yahweh. And again from Yeshayah here, 28, verse 11. Indeed, with foreign lips, speaking a currently unfamiliar language, with stammering speech, filled with derisive and often mocking overtones to ridicule. Boy, does that sound like Yada. Yeah, we're picking on him because he's not here.
Yeah, we can do that now.
Yeah, we can. We're safe. And in a future foreign tongue in the last days, he will continuously speak to these particular people and this family, to whom and to show the way to the benefits of the relationship he is actively expressing on their behalf. This will provide spiritual tranquility and contentment for those seeking to be nourished and to recuperate. This is the means to find relief and be restored after having left a bad situation, and boy, is Israel in a bad situation. So, verse 12 says, but many will be unwilling, remaining opposed to him, unaccepting because of their obedience to their fathers, and thus unwilling to listen. Therefore the word of Yahweh will be for them blah, 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 worthless filth and futility, just a bunch of commandments, a drumbeat of endless rules, nothing but one line after another of meaningless gibberish, a little from one place, a little more from another. As a result, they will walk accordingly, and they will stumble and fall, in the end, upon their butts, and they will be scrutinized and broken, ensnared and immobilized. As a result, and I'm skipping down here to 21, Yahweh will take a stand to reestablish and restore, consistent with what occurred at Mount Peratzim, breaking free, like the Amak, the profound implications of Gibeon, lifting up. He will be provoked to anger. And that's just, I just find that sad that it has to come to this, but this is what it is going to come to. And this is your warning, Israel, that Yahweh is going to be provoked to anger. He will be sufficiently enraged, ragaz, to engage and do what he needs to accomplish, working with the non-Yisraelite, furthering his work with the Nakri, the observant and responsive foreigner, who is serving him. So now at this time, go about writing this against them upon a tablet or flat-paneled screen. Then inscribe it in a book, and it will be for the last days, serving as an enduring witness. So we undertake this knowing that Yada will be rejected, but Yahweh himself is going to intervene. And this intervention is recorded again in Mizmor 83. I mentioned it last week, at the midway point of Shabuw'ah. So get out there and share and be a signpost in our modern-day city square. Expect rejection and don't be alarmed by dismissiveness or even hateful responses. As Yahweh once told our friend Yashaya, it is not you they are rejecting, it's me. So what do you think, Kirk? What's been your approach, and how do you suggest that others contribute?
Well, it's two things. Let me say one thing about the Nakri, our friend. I know him quite well. I've visited with him 3 different occasions. Hospitality is always wonderful when I'm there, and we talked on the phone to each other for 15 years. Been part of shows. I'm probably not smart enough to be the guy he needed to be on the show, but once again,
I'm not that smart either, so we're with you on that.
but this is a very gracious, most kind human being I've ever met, and he's wonderful. He's the most dedicated person I've ever seen. There is nothing in this that he has gained financially. There's nothing in this that he has put more out, and that my back after 3 hours in a chair on a computer, you just start screaming. His does too. I know he talks about it, and 12 hours a day. He's not kidding. He's really spends his time in. He's walked away from everything fun. I'm a golfer. He's a golfer, and even down there, I would have loved to sneak him away and go play golf. I mean, we did get on his boat a couple of times, on his yacht. And when he had a yacht,
got to play a little.
He knows how to play a little bit, but I mean, it's really there's nobody more dedicated to getting Israel this message for Yahweh anywhere in the world. He is the real deal. So, But now back to your question. What's my approach, and how would I suggest others could contribute? Let me tell you the bad news first. 17 years ago, I was reading Yada Yahowah for the first time, and that was about the only book he had that would pertain to this series. And I shared what I was reading to just about anyone that had a pulse, and I thought that this is the most fascinating thing I'd ever read, and answers every question I could think of about God, Yahweh. And we had with about 3 different responses, and see if they sound familiar to you. The first one I would get was, "Get away from me."
I've heard that for sure.
Listen, these are people I know and like me. These were students and friends and collectors and everything else, and just neighbors. Then I'd get things like, but if that's true, then my dead mother, well, that means I love my dead mother, and she won't be in heaven, and so I don't want to go either. And I'm going, really?
I've gotten that a lot too.
It was her job to tell you, lady, not the other way around. So I'm sorry she let you down, but she made choices, but you have an opportunity. And then you'll get things like this one. You're right, but if I were to do that, if I was to change it, I would, number one, I'd be embarrassed because I've been telling all my children about Christianity or whatever it was at the time, and then if I change, my family will leave me, and that'll happen. That can happen. Because
that happened to me.
Did it? Yeah. So
my parents did not enjoy or appreciate what I brought to them, and I was summarily cast out. They can't even eat a meal with me because I'm a heathen.
Okay, well, Anyway, but what can you do? What can you do? You can realize that.
Just let them go.
Yeah, you can realize that just let them go, because the numbers are of the responders are very, very small, and that's okay with Yah apparently. I mean, Yah, the scene where Yah, he asks him to open the doors of heaven, and he turns around and looks to see all these people that he thought were there, and they're not there. And you just quoted him. He said they didn't reject you, Yah, they rejected me.
Right.
So it's nothing you can do. They have free will, and you want them to have free will. So otherwise, you have nothing. So, but no one can be coerced. So all you can really do is but before you start doing what I did, just start sharing as on the go. You've got to know, and you'll hear Yada say this too, and it's absolutely true. You have to know your stuff. You have to read these things, pay attention, take notes, remember what you're saying, and say it correctly, and before you start talking to people. So take some time and really learn what you're about to say, and then when it comes to, if nothing else, you can encourage people to read these books. You can send them to the books. You and I have a little project going on where we're taking out ads, and I get to play with my art at the same time. We take ads in order to encourage people to look and to say, what's this all about, and maybe read the books. And I think you told me on the last one with the owl or something, that we had a rather huge response. So at least we had a lot of lookers.
Yes.
So you do whatever you can, and so that they will read the books. And I think the word will either grab them or it won't. And what do you choose? Well, I think, let's see if you agree with me on this, and then I'll shut up. Probably the Yada Yahowah to me is the most scientific thing. It has stuff about the Big Bang. It has stuff about the size of an ark that you couldn't get over by a 500-foot tsunami, which is the same dimensions they use on aircraft carriers today. Things like that could not have been known. Moshe, it's just on and on and on and on. And how it actually happened is described exactly as scientists figure out these things happen, like the flood. So if you scientific stuff, that's really the first one for you.
That's what got me attracted to it. Science.
Yeah, me too. Well, that was the only one that was there, so I fell in that one right away. But the Intro to God is just getting to know Yah is a fascinating book. I think he wrote it originally for his son to explain to us, a friend of his. And then, if you're Yehudim, then you're going to have to read Goddamn Religion and Coming Home at some point. I mean, and so you know what you're up. What Yah was really requesting you to do. Yeah. If you're a Christian that's stumbled into this, and you see the merit in it, then read Questioning Paul is the most definitive blow to eradicate Christianity from your life. It was so easy to walk away from Christianity. For me to begin with, but even if I had any residual left over, reading Questioning Paul, even the first draft he sent us. It was easy. I mean, my God, you're kidding. You've been tolerated that for any length of time. and so Babel I have a hard time with. It's just kind of gives me the creeps, to be honest with you, on that whole book. Yeah. But I know it has merit for reading it. But I do.
It is creepy, but that's
I know, it's just
that's what he was doing, was exposing the creepiness, and it really is gross at times.
It is. I mean, but I spent a lot of time with the Goddamn Religion books in the old form when we were doing shows, and it was just like, my gosh, it's just wallowing in the filth. But know your enemy and who's out to get you. But that would be my response to your question. Yeah, I don't know what else you can do. Either become knowledgeable enough that you can help somebody, or send them to the books and let them read. And then y'all discuss together later, things like that.
Yep. I totally agree with you. I think we have tons of material to share. The more that share, the better. So, all right. Well, tonight we're going to talk to you all about the Shamitah, which is tied to Shabuw'ah Shamitah is a particular counting method that is used in the Torah. And so we're going to introduce you to how to count to Shabuw'ah, because that's really where it all starts. If you don't know how to count to it, the understanding of it just sort of gets lost in translation. So if we have time after that, we'll go over the menus for the feasts. A Shamitah is the year of emancipation and of canceling debts and being freed of obligation. This release occurs every 7th year during the Feast of Sukkah, camping out, which you can read about in Dabarym 31:10. The purpose of this is to show that the benefits of Shabuw'ah are completed during Sukkah, when everyone has been liberated, reconciled, and are camping out together with Yahweh. The math is simple. If you can count to 7 and repeat the count 7 times, you can count the Shamitah. 7 years times 7 years equals 49. And the Yowbel is the 50th year, and it stands alone. It's kind of its own thing. And there's one at the beginning and end. So it can count as 1 or as 50, depending on which side of the count you're on. But we'll get more into that. So reading from Shemot 23, Moshe recorded, 6 years you should sow your land and gather in the produce thereof. But on the 7th you should allow it to fall and lie fallow. Let it turn to stubble, scattering and dispersing it for the purposes of future renewal. So those in need who are willing to capitalize upon the opportunity and take responsibility among your people may eat it and be nourished. Moreover, leave the remainder behind, so that other living creatures of the open fields and countryside may feed on it. Do the same with your vineyards and olive groves. So you can read more about the Shemitah count in Chronology 25, 1 through 7, and in Yada Yahowah, Volume 7, Chapter 2. But we're going to skip down to verse 8. And you should count on your behalf 7 Shabats of years, 7 sevens of years, Sheba, Shana, Sheba. As a foundational pattern of conduct, this word is pa'am, as a persistent means to guide your steps and base your understandings. And this is foundational. You really must know this to get anywhere when you're counting time or understanding the feast. And this shall be for you time periods of 7 Shabbats of years, 49 years. And we should recognize this pattern because this is exactly how to count down to Shabuw'ah on a smaller scale within every feast cycle each year. This next passage explains how we are to celebrate the Yowbel. And you should extend a shofar, ram's horn, trumpet, sounding a blast which signals warning and shouts for joy, providing notice of the doorway to healing. And surprise, that word is Taruw'ah. So this is how we celebrate the Yowbel every 50 years. The Taruw'ah is hidden inside of that. So sound the shofar, announcing Taruw'ah. On the 10th of the month, the 7th month, on the day of reconciliations, you shall continue to extend the shofar all throughout your realm. While the insights one could gather here could fill an entire podcast, what we're seeing is that in Chronology 25, Yahweh has encapsulated Taruw'ah and Yom Kippurim within the observation of the Yowbel every 50th year. And that should not fail to surprise us because, as we now know, all 3 of these feasts are fulfilled in the Yowbel of 2033. So it's that old time to see it.
Yes.
Since the Shamitah and Yowbel are the framework for counting down Yahweh's timeline, it's all based on Yahweh's 7-step plan. And the Shamitah and Yowbel are reflected in our annual countdown from Matsah to Shabuw'ah. All of the feasts they're like interlocking, they're interwoven with each other. So now that we've gotten a general grasp of what a Shamitah is, Kirk, I know you've prepared something for us on this, so I've been looking forward to hearing this all week, by the way. So what have you got for us tonight?
Well, first of all, let me thank, I did an analytical worksheet on it, what I call it, and where I break down a word, and I've been doing this for so long. In fact, I used to do this every night before all the shows, and when we had weekly shows, I would take the major passages and break it down. So I started getting a real good formula. I don't have all the resources that a lot of people have as far as the money to buy logos and on and on and on. And I had no computer skills when I started this. In fact, when I started out with Yada, I didn't even know how to do an email. I just didn't do that such thing. I called it somebody if they wanted a letter. So this was my system that I kind of put together. And then what some people know, that we're working on a glossary right now of the top 1,000 words used, so it makes it easy for people to begin to translate these words as well, because that's really the secret about knowing what you're presenting and knowing it. I did not want to take what he had to say, what Yada had to say in these books, and go to people and present it to them and say, look, this is what it says, and be ignorant of proving it. So I wanted to learn how to translate. I couldn't go to the store in Jerusalem and buy a loaf of bread without fumbling over words. So it's not that kind of knowledge I needed. What I needed, can I analyze each one of these words and know that is exactly the way it should be translated in the context that it's written. So I came up with a little system, and what Jackie and David was so nice last night and this morning, they posted this on the resource on Yada Yahowah site, and it's there if you want to look along with us, or if you want to look at it some other time, it's right there. So what I have is I have a little spreadsheet thing where I have Shamitah. I took the word. I looked. It has a Strong's number, all the words in the Torah, Prophet, and Psalms, the Mizmor and Navi, all have a designated number, so you can look up on just about any lexicon around the world, or even if they have a different numbering system, they'll usually have a cross-reference. You can look that up and see what all these scholars have said. They choose what words they want to support their religion. You'll find that if you don't know. But if you look through all the words, you can see pretty quickly what these words mean. Shamitah is quite an interesting one. So I also included on the sheet, you'll find this ancient Hebrew lettering, because, and I mean on good soil doing this, on the firm soil doing this, because we were talking earlier that Moshe wrote with these very pictographs. And we know that on the recent, especially it's very provable on the recent discoveries of Yahusha ben Nun, who we found things that he had placed on the mountain during the period of it when they went into Israel. So and they were using these letters then, and they're unadulterated, as you know. They don't have any vowel points. You can't twist them around, and you don't have letters that you can't understand. Each one of these pictures, what's unique about the language is that it is every letter actually, not besides just having a sound, also has a meaning. And then what we discovered was that when these things are strung together, going from left to right, when they're juxtaposed to another letter, it enhances the meaning, and it'll tell you whether it's a positive word or a negative word or something like that. So it's very, very revealing. So I add that to my normal lexicon. But what we have here on Shamitah is the meaning, and this is a little dry, but bear with me. I think it'll bear fruit for you at some point. It's a noun. In grammar, and it means to release or to shake off, to a letting drop, a temporary remission, to be carted off, and that can be good or bad. It can be carted off to safety, or it can be carted off to Babylon, in context of what a Shemitah is going to mean. A remission of debt and suspension, which you've already addressed on what it means, of labor. Yeah. And then here's what you'll also find on this sheet and all our other material that we'll be putting together on the glossary is it has a number of occurrences where you can see how many times it's used and actually look up all those different places. And then we have a
it's only used 5 times, huh?
Only 5 times. Yeah, it's not a real popular word. It was only used. He told you what he's going to tell you, and then he didn't tell you anymore. He said he figured you're supposed to read it. So the first use in Deuteronomy 15:1, and I use the English designation rather than saying Shemuth and Barashith and Kara and all that, because these are the ways you're going to have to look it up, because most of these things in English are going to use those. So I keep those in play, not because I prefer them. It's just now. Another thing what you'll find is that it was used in those 5 times that it was used. Is basically a feminine noun. However, on 15:2, it appears 2 times, and one of them is used as a verb in the qual infinitive absolute, and I'll explain that in just a minute. So you go to there's an actionable part of most of these nouns, and that is the verb, and that's shamat. The only difference between the 2 words, the way they're written, there's a hey involved at the end of Shamitah. So that means that what's happening is resulting to the person who is standing up, walking, and engaged. That's what the Hayes picture is. So that's why I like the picture thing. Because if you were illiterate, you can see these letters, and somebody could tell you what it means, and you'd get it.
Exactly.
So without belaboring it too long, it explains all the action is explained of the noun. It reinforces that, and as you will go through our little chart there that's now posted, I thought the third point of it, I'll just skip to that one, is Yahweh asked that the land be allowed to rest and to lie fallow every 7 years. Everyone is in total agreement to that. It became an opportunity, though, to trust in Yahweh with the understanding that his promises to bless far beyond any loss that would come about by letting the land rest or release the debtors of their debt over that 7 years, over that last year. These are opportunities to trust Yahweh. They are, and really see it, not only just reinforce it to you, but it also shows to the whole community that this is what you're doing, and I'm trusting, and I'm not worried about this stuff. You can always add extra in the 6th year. I mean, I think you do take a double harvest, don't you, in the 6th year? But regardless, he don't want you to starve or anything, but he wants the land, everybody to have an opportunity, and he's blessed you so much. And I took you out, he says, out of Yisra'el. Why don't you treat other people the way? That just behooves. Now, another thing, when you're analyzing words, and on this analytical worksheet, what you'll see is there's a 2-letter root. Most words in Hebrew have a 2-letter root. Good word in point would be El for Eloah. They have a meaning. This one is Shem Mem, which is the picture of a tooth, and a Mem, which is water. It means to breathe. That word means to breathe. The wind of breath denotes an individual character. It also can mean desolate, the negative side of it. It can designate a title, a character, person, or a place. Now remember, most words in Hebrew have a positive, negative slant, if you would. So if you look for them, and obviously you can't use them both at the same time, but it could be, and actually you can, and we'll see that in just a minute. The example of a person and character is the name, their renown, their fame, and Shem. That's the way you pronounce Shem Mem. Is the word for there, used to identify another place. What's interesting to me in the pictographs, I break those down on the 2nd page. Ancient pictographs designate both sounds of it, like an English letter, and they also are symbolic of meanings, as I mentioned before. And we have found that the direction, once again, of the pictographs, where they face and where they juxtapose to, also adds to the meaning. The reason that's important to me is I'm trying to figure out what does this word really mean. When I started, I just wanted to prove that what he was saying was true, and I could defend it. Because I was on his show and doing this, and people called me, and people would write me, and da-da-da. And I wanted to say, yes, I can tell you I have done what he has done. He said, go do it yourself. He tells you how in all his books. I just did it with the resources I had. So I'm not trying to hijack your show here, but let me just go ahead and finish if we have time.
No, this is awesome, because this actually proves my point about Shemitah later. So please continue.
Good. So hopefully, and then I'll tell you what the word actually means as you look at it symbolically, which is pretty cool, I think. So the first word is shin. The first letter rather is shin, which is teeth. It press. It means to press down when you eat. Form words. You use it for language. We use our teeth for nourishment, both literal and symbolic. And there's a pressure, and because it presses down, you can use the word. It can mean pressure, or the letter can mean pressure, which is mental or physical. Mem is water. It's thrown like a little wave, and it's water is life. It means cleansing. It is, after all, a universal solvent. Or chaos and confusion, the mighty sea, and that makes it very useful as a metaphor for the Gentiles, for the Goyim. The thet is an interesting T sound, TH sound. The thet is a basket shaped like a basket, is a circle with an X in the middle of it, and a thet is something that you use to hold something that's very important, something that's even precious. It can be just a simple container or a bowl. It is also a mark. It illustrates a person's signature. You've seen people make their X marks the spot sort of thing, and it's even a registration mark on maps.
Right.
The hay, for those that are familiar, if not, it is a person standing with their legs engaged, open, walking, and their arms reaching out. It's a sign of being upright, engaged, walking the proper path, which would be the Moedim,
right.
It shows one beholding the greatness of Yahweh in an awe and with respect. And I think of it as I think of it in terms of it being a near or complete person in the sense of being upright, and it's one who understands. We go from learning, knowing, to understanding,
right.
Which is.
Can I pause you here to tell you this is just funny, but it's like you have this guy who's walking to Yahweh, and he needs food for his tummy, his basket, and he's getting water and food from Yahweh. You could even equate it to a guy being put in this safe enclosure, this het, and being given water and food, because the Shemitah involves taking a rest from working for food. And when you're in an agricultural community, that's a huge deal to risk not growing crops. And Yahweh's saying, I'm going to provide this to you. Trust me.
Well, actually, it fertilizes the ground better to plow it back under, or to leave it, let it just fall. Don't really plow it under. You just let it fall. And the animals come and feed off of it. And that, of course, they leave droppings. And if you think about it the way the farmers do, it's really a wonderful thing. If nothing else, farmers should be taking at least part of a seventh of their land and doing it every year. If you just for their health of their, and then you wouldn't need so many chemicals. So, but I always figured it all out. All you got to do is follow his advice. So I do want to point out something.
It's neat to see the letters.
Yeah. I'll point out two other things, because people who look at our charts, and our chart is also posted on there with what each one of these letters mean. The Shemek is also an S word. There's another S and another T. The Shemek is an S sound, and it represents something that's sharp and piercing and thorny. It can represent a shield. More times than not, it's the fence that protects or turns things away. It can also be, believe it or not, it can also be an upright pole. It could represent the support, or even a signpost, or a banner, where you could hang your banner from that as well. And then, interestingly enough, the other T sound comes from a taw. We do have another taw letter, another T letter rather. The taw represents a pole or a beam, a mark, and a signature, and of course a signpost along the way. Think of Zion or Mount Morah. A banner it can be a banner akin to a lighthouse. It is a definitive upright pole, like unto Edom, which supports the Ark of the Covenant and holds up the tent supports actually the tent that covers the Ark of the Covenant and holds up the family.
Right.
So that's the way I approach it. The only other thing that I do is and you can do this if you wish. If you decide to do some of this, one of the things you can do is you can find any interlineary that is good. I happen to use Bible Hub's interlineary is a very good one. And below every word on the interlineary, you will find that it will tell you what the grammar is, and it's pretty easy. And and when we get the glossary done at some point, we will have I call it a grammar cheat sheet, something you can understand not only when Yahweh's talking. You can use it for your translations, but it's already really done for you. You just have to look it up and know what these grammar parts of grammar actually mean there. But the grammar, I'll tell you how serious the intent is of Yahweh's point of view. Shamitah as a feminine noun is straightforward enough. However, in Deuteronomy 15:12 in Hebrew, it is which is, by the way, is Dabarym is really what it should say, the words Deuteronomy. Shamitah is written in the infinitive absolute and is an extremely flexible, non-finite verbal form. All that is to say that this form is used most often to express intensity or certainty of verbal action. It tells us that this is extremely important, and to ignore it, Shamitah, is not without very harsh consequences.
Yep.
And that's
the stuff. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm trying to demonstrate, actually, tonight.
Yes. Well, you do it better. I'm doing the quick, dirty, down and dirty, short version. But
there's no better. It's totally different. It's just neat to see that even in the letters of these words, you can get the same meaning that Yahweh is trying to convey on a micro scale.
They came out as slaves. They didn't teach slaves how to read.
Mm-hmm.
How were they going to see this? So you had to read to them. They understood words when you talked to them. Slaves just can't read and write; they're illiterate. So for the most part, but even with the pictographs, when you see it, you can learn it very, very fast because you'll understand what those things mean. So we have, once again, the Shamitah is another opportunity. We have at least 70 chances a year to meet with Yahweh. Right. It's an opportunity to show him we trust him and we love him and to be there. We have the Moed Mikros. We have how many Shamitahs in a year? 7.5 or something? Is the way it breaks down? Or am I confused?
I don't know how many Shamitahs are in a year because it's every. There's one every 7 years, but there's I don't know. There's 52 weeks in a year.
Weeks is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so it's probably okay. That's what I meant to say. So
I got you. Yeah, 52 weeks in a year. So there's 52 natural Shabbats.
Okay, well, I will close with one last remark, the last comment in the pictograph. When you string these together and you look at those meanings that we were just discussing, what you'll think, I'm pretty sure you'll find what I found. It means Yahweh's words, the teeth, cleanse with the water, cleanse and purify. With the thet is protect and carry away to safety. Those that walk, because remember we have a hay that's walking, engaged, those that walk to Yah and view him with respect and awe. So that's what Shamitah means.
Well, that's perfect. And just as you've shared with us in 2 Chronicles 36:21, the consequence for failing to count the Shemitah was severe because Israel forgot, and Yehuda, they forgot. They neglected to observe them. So they had to pay back the land 70 years of neglected Shemitahs. And this rest was caught up while Yehuda was in exile in Babylon for 70 years. And if you keep that in mind, I want to look at Daniel 9:24 because Dode talks to Daniel here while he was in exile during those makeup years for the Shemitahs that they had forgotten to count. So it says, the many promises associated with Shabuw'ah and the Shabat, along with the vows pertaining to the things 7 represents, Shabuw'im, Shabiyim, are determined and decreed, divided out and planned. So you have to go to the beginning, because if something has been laid out in its entirety, it has a beginning and an end. And if you look at Bereshit 2:2, you'll begin to recognize that the work of the Malachi on Shabat is culminated in Shabuw'ah. From the very beginning, this formula was mathematically laid out for us by divisions of 7, 49, and 50 in time. The math is so simple, it's actually shocking that we've screwed it up this bad. It's embarrassing. So just by way of demonstration, Kirk, on average, how many Yowbel do you think a man would have experienced in his lifetime in Israel, considering that a Yowbel is every 50 years or half a century?
Unless you live 100 years old, unless you're 100 years old, you got probably only one shot.
Yep, maybe one shot at experiencing a Yowbel. And how many Shemitahs do you think a guy would have experienced on average in a lifetime, considering that they are every 7 years?
once again, this, it'd be 9, 10. I'm using your
Yeah, you'd be lucky to get one a decade. If you're 70 years old, you could experience 10, but probably 9. Oh. So I think that really puts into perspective in our minds that the Shemitah act as corrective years, which is what Pa'am was referencing in Korah 25:8, so that you can't get confused. It's like if you start stepping off the path, every 7 years you're getting realigned onto that pathway. Mm-hmm. And a lot can be lost in a 50-year spread. But imagine as a culture, if everybody in society was counting down every 7th year, during which you all got to take a whole year off of hard labor. I mean, I would not want to miss that. I need a Shemitah. So, you know what I mean? So it'd be hard to fool that population into forgetting where they were in time, because they're not going to want to skip that.
No, that's a brilliant. Well done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a realignment point. And so they wouldn't have lost so many years in their calendars. I mean, who wouldn't want a year off? It's such a gift, just like Shemitah describes. When you look at the human struggle of survival and how fragile our existence is, which is exactly what you found in the word Shemitah, this is about trusting in Yahweh to provide for us what we need. The weekly Shabbat is a reminder of this promise, this protection, and this assurance of all we need to live, given to us as a gift from God. And this is exactly what the rabbis have distorted. And we know the Kohen knew the timeline before their exile in Babylon, which means that overlooking the Shemitah should never have happened. Further compounding this problem, and just as Yahweh said they would, the religious leaders attempted to corrupt the calendar, and now Jews don't know where they are in time. It is year 5,991 in Year of Yahweh, as we call it, since Adam's expulsion from Gan Eden. But on Hebcal, they're showing it is 5,784. The difference of which is a full 206 whole years and going into 207 years. That is shockingly bad behavior on the part of the rabbis, because they know better. They know what a Shemitah is. They know what a Yowbel is. But they don't view it as important to their agenda, and why would they? So understanding the Shemitah is incredibly important, and if you want to study this more, which I seriously advise, because if we were exiled for not counting this, what does it mean when you start counting it again? It means you're coming home. So go to the Torah timeline on the website at yadayah.com and look at the bottom of the page. I have published tabs, and select the Shemitah counting guide where I've walked you through, and Jackie helped me put this all together. Yeah. Follow along with us to familiarize yourself with how to count, and you can also word search Shemitah in the search tool at yadayah.com and see what Yada has written. So we're going to move on to discuss day 50 and the 49 days of the Shabuw'ah countdown in Korah 23:15. It says, accurately count from the day after the Shabat, from the day you came forth and bore the sheaf of grain as an ascending wave offering. Bikuwrym is always the day that we wave the Omer. Bikuwrym is always the day after the Shabat of Matsah, which is a Shabat, regardless of what day it falls on in the week. In our first example of this celebration in 1447 BCE, Matsah naturally fell on a Shabbat, and we should treat every matzah this way, regardless of whether or not it falls naturally on a Shabbat in our time. So, this is clearly saying, from the day after matzah, on the day of, from the day after you came forth and bore the sheaf of grain. So this is the day after Bikuwrym. Yahweh is making this painfully clear to follow the bouncing ball. Matzah, Bikuwrym, day after. This is primarily important because this is used by a lot of people to confuse how we count down to Shabuw'ah. So a total of 7 complete Sabbaths. This word Sabbath does not mean Shabbat. Shabbat, which is the word used, this is Korah 23:15. This is Strong's number 7676, and this word used here means weeks. And this word is a derivative of Shabbat, which is Strong's 7673. And we celebrate Shabbat every seventh day. So Shabbat is pointing to a 7-day count, but not intending that we count natural Shabbats. Yahweh could have easily instructed us to count natural Shabbats after Bikuwrym, and instead he went to great lengths to make sure we do not interpret his instruction that way. So while it may sound like we're supposed to jump to the nearest natural Shabbat after Bikuwrym and then count 7 more Shabbats, that is incorrect. And to further dispel any potential confusion in learning how to count Shabuw'ah, Yahweh provided 2 literal day counts, and I call this Yahweh's fail-safe. Shabuw'ah is 50 days after Matsah and 49 days after Bikuwrym. And by that very reality, we know for certain that Bikuwrym is the day after Matsah. You can't get around it. So Bikuwrym is like the Yowbel, both associated with 50 or 1, depending on which end of the count you're looking for, and it's a continuous and ongoing cycle of 50, 49, and 7 forever. This is Korah 23:16, always and forever. You shall accurately count, reckon, record, relate, rehearse, and regale the day of 50, Yom HaMashim, starting from the next day after the 7th Shabbat. And you should choose without reservation or interruption to come near and approach the renewing, restoring, and affirming gift to approach Yahweh. So to approach Yahweh on Shabuw'ah, Yahweh asks that we learn how to count it, which is why I've shared this. And, we start with Pesach, walk through Matsah. You have to be able to count Pesach and Matsah correctly to determine that Bikuwrym is really on the 3rd day of the week of Matsah, of Hag Matzah. Mm-hmm. And finally, counting to Shabuw'ah, because you cannot count to Shabuw'ah without properly counting Matzah. And this makes them irrevocably linked. And I do think, and I encourage everyone to literally and actually count along with Yahweh, because when you begin to train your brain to think this way, there's a myriad of other insights you'll start to connect with when reading Torah. And it's useful to, like I said before, go to that first example of when that instruction was used and implemented, which is during the Yatzah, and see how we should engage it every time thereafter. And if you would like to see the mathematical proof, me and my charts, I have created a chart called Torah Chronology. It is published next to the Shemitah counting guide at the bottom of the Torah timeline. And there I have accounted for every single day that has passed between Abib 1 to Shabuw'ah in 1447 BCE, because Yahweh gave us an accounting of every single day. And it places Moshe on the mountain with Yahweh, receiving the Torah and celebrating Shabuw'ah exactly 49 days after the Red Sea crossing. So there's no way to mess this up. The purpose of the wave offering of the Omer is it's important because it's interesting, but it's actually a demonstration that the souls purchased by Dode on Matzah are bundled together and ready for transport on Bikuwrym. So this is the very day that Dode's soul rose up with Ruach Kodesh in 33 CE out of Sheol, just like Beni Yisra'el finished passing over at dawn on Bikuwrym morning in 1447 BCE. And they made it through this terrifying ordeal of Matzah night. I just want to take a moment to pause and imagine what it would feel like to be trapped between 2 walls of water in the middle of the night, running for your lives, being pursued by your former slave owners who were acting demonic and sadistic towards you. And then to boot, your God, who you just met to avenge you, had just killed the firstborn of all of their families. And so on Bikuwrym morning, imagine how their relief, was palpable, standing there on the shore as the sun began to shine on their faces, expelling the darkness from which they were just liberated, as the armies of Pharaoh were destroyed before their eyes. This is day 3 of Matzah, and it is really a moving scene to play out in your mind so that we can grasp the implications and connection to Dode's Matzah journey through Sheol and how he became the Bikor at the morning of Bikuwrym, draining out all of the bitterness between God and the family through his selfless actions, washing away the rebellious and religious crimes we have committed against God, of which we could not on our own become free. The grain which is bundled up for Bikuwrym is turned into bread on Shabuw'ah to rise up to Yahweh. And Yahweh is painstakingly clear that the grain represents harvested souls. A lot of people ask me what I do. So on Bikuwrym, my family likes to take 2 bundles of flour, which is 4 pounds each, and omer is about 4 pounds. And along with our lamb, we wave it in the air. And we don't have any officiator to do this, so the kids enjoy engaging with it. And it's neat to watch their faces because you can just see as they enact this, regale this, engage this, it dawns on their faces that the waving in the air represents us rising on the air in a harvest to Yahweh on his spirit, just like the flowers elevated as they raise their arms higher and higher in a gentle waving motion. So if you try it, you may just find that Yahweh knows how to get a point across. And when we actively engage, rehearse, and regale these events to the best of our ability, we do learn something. So one of the omers we use to make matzah for Bikuwrym, and we mix it with the olive oil and bake it, and then we dip it in poured out wine. And the second omer, we always save it for Shabuw'ah to use in our yeasted loaves, which shows the connection between these 2 events. I mean, that's just what we do. I think everybody really should figure out their own process.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, it is cool. So now that we've covered the Shamitah, and I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Kirk, before I move on.
Oh, far away. You're doing fine. Great stuff.
Okay. So we've covered the Shamitah and how to count from Matsah, and I think that's really important to stress that you cannot disconnect Shabuw'ah from Matsah and Bikuwrym. And there's no room to add an 8th day. There's no room to change the day that Bikuwrym falls because you'll screw it up and you won't have Moshe on the mountain on that 49th day getting the Torah from Yahweh on a Shabuw'ah. So it's really, there's no room for error in how we count this. So let's read from Mizmor 23 and talk a little bit about Yahweh's table, because these are feasts after all. You have prepared and arranged a table, and this word is Shulchan, that which can be extended and stretched out, from shalach, to send away. So you've prepared and arranged a table before me, conspicuously beyond the presence of my adversaries who would narrow my scope and silence me, sarar ani, of my enemies seeking to diminish me, those who are hostile towards me, opposing me, of those who would bind me up, confining and restricting me. My cup overflows with abundance. This is so stunningly clear about our time, and Yahweh has laid out this table beautifully. I tend to view the word shulchan as a pun in a way, because you can apply it to a graph, a times table, or a timeline, similar to how Yahweh extended and stretched out the foundation of the universe on a flat expanse. And you can actually plot this stuff in a chart. It's neat. So anyway, here we are just before the time of the sarar, the time Yisra'el is thinned at the waist, and we're finally understanding and eating at the Shabuw'ah table, which is based on understanding divisions of 7. In Malachi 1:6, Yahweh talks to Israel, and he says, "So you say, in what way have we shown contempt for and disregarded, even more pillaged and plundered your name? By presenting defiled and rotten bread, nagash lachem ga'al, unacceptable and decomposing food, which is polluted, upon my altar. But you say, in what way have we defiled and stained you? By you inferring that which has been furnished and appointed, hu shulchan, that the table and furnishings by Yahweh is of no value. When you influence and oppress, then sacrifice the ignorant and blind. Is that not wrong? And then when you lord over and exploit, Passover, along with those who should have benefited from Pesach, especially those you have afflicted and diseased, is that not wrong? Try that approach with your governor. Will he accept you, or will he endure your presence? Asked Yahweh of the spiritual messengers. And yet now you beg and plead, imploring for intercession and favor at the appearance of God. Have mercy on us. With this being a result of your influence, will there be anyone among you, even in your presence, lifted up or raised? Ask Yahweh of the heavenly implements. While this passage is loaded with insights, the gist of it is that when Yahweh returns, the rabbis will be begging for mercy, and they will find none because they have obstructed Jews from capitalizing on Pesach after milking them for monetary gain and infecting them with a religious disease. None of them will be raised, meaning they will not be harvested, which is relevant to Shabuw'ah because the harvest that you make it to as a byproduct of celebrating Pesach, Matsah, and Bikuwrym is Shabuw'ah. And then Taruw'ah thereafter, they also won't be making. And they certainly won't be redeemed at Yom Kippurim when Dod is standing in front of them with Yahweh here telling them they don't have a chance. So Yada writes, Shulchan, rendered that which has been furnished and appointed, is typically truncated to table. However, he sees far more in this word since its actionable root is shalak, that which has been presented and acknowledged, directed, and established by Yahweh. The religious assault on God includes his words in addition to what is set upon his table. And according to Yahweh, the religious among his people have made a mockery of Pesach and unyeasted bread. And all one has to do to verify the accuracy of God's assessment is to examine the religious practices prescribed by the rabbis. Matzah has been relegated to an ingredient and is no longer observed as a mikra. The Seder plate looks like it was prepared by Cain, not Babel, and the rabbinical approach is esteemed, while Yahweh's table is disrespected. So how is it that Yahweh should spare them when they have disregarded and disdained his means to reconciliation? Yada says there's something far worse, however, than overlooking Yahweh's Torah. Here, God is accusing Jews of nagez, influencing their own in an oppressive way, even of extracting payment from them, and in the process of sacrificing the ignorant and blind. Yahweh is accusing rabbis of lording over and exploiting nagas, Pesach, which is exactly what they have done, and Yahweh condemns it as ra'ah, immoral and unethical. Fortunately, instructions have been given how to approach God by attending his feast at the right time and in the right way. 3 times a year in the conduct of one's life, and for the purpose of renewal each year, pa'am, baha shana, occurrences that are a baseline during the cycle of the season. Every one of you should remember to appear before Yahweh, beside the place, or your God, Yahweh your God, beside the place, which to show the way to the benefit from the relationship he has chosen and prefers. For the Chag, festival feast of Matzah. So if you try to tell me that Matzah is not a day to celebrate a feast, you're wrong. It is a week-long celebration, but there is a day of Matzah. For the Chag festival feast of Shabuw'ah, and for the Chag festival feast of Sukkah shelters. And they should not appear before Yahweh without good reason or without what is expected, rakam, without purpose or cause, void of what is necessary, thoughtlessly or impetuously. So what's expected? We're going to turn to Mizmor 4:5 for the answer. Choose the appropriate sacrifices, zabak zebak, honestly, accurately, and fairly, to be vindicated, and put your confidence and trust in Yahweh. Since it is exclusively through Dod, the Bakar, the chosen one, that we are able to approach Yahweh, attempting to appear without him is rakam, without purpose and void of what is necessary. On Bikuwrym, we are introduced to a bull for the first time, and on Shabuw'ah, there are 2 menu items with which you should approach in addition to the lamb, a bull and a goat. This is a preview now from what I've written from Coming Home Volume 4, so it has yet to be reviewed by Yada. He may have other insights or corrections, so I'm just going to go with you through the menu of the first 4 feasts rather quickly, and understand Yada may have differences of opinion as he gets through this material. Okay. So, to properly observe Pesach, Yahweh provided a lamb and asks us to eat maror, bitter herbs, alongside of matzah, unleavened bread. No one gets to Sukkah, however, without eating this menu item, not even Yisra'el during Taruw'ah and Yom Kippurim. And here's why I say that. Going to Zechariah 12:10, and for a time I will pour out upon the house of Dod and upon those who dwell in Jerusalem a spirit of compassion and acceptance. Ruah chen, the spirit of favor and mercy, of a beautiful and beneficial spiritual garment, for those requesting mercy and clemency. So they will look to me, accompanied by the one whom they have pierced, and they will lament, being exceedingly emotional over him, as one shrieks when reunited with someone special, making the family whole, anguishing wa marar over him, as one despairs over the firstborn. So wa marar al hu ka marar. Marar is the root word of maror, bitter herbs that are eaten on Pesach. This prophecy has yet to come to pass, but it will on Yom Kippurim in 33 CE. On that day, Yisra'el and Yehudim, who have survived Yaakov's Sur, will look upon their lamb for the first time and recognize their betrayal. And they too will experience marar, bitterness, with their lamb, weeping over the Bikuwrym, as we have all done. There is healing and acceptance, and since this is a day of mercy upon the repentant among Israel and not wrath, their tears will turn to joy, as their relationship to Yahweh is repaired and healed. And Dod the Lamb, as the authorized representative, wielding power and authority, as kinsman redeemer and high priest through the inherited right of Malach Sadak, will cancel away and drain the bitterness, as is done for us all on Matsah. After all, this is a Yowbel. So, you should choose to closely examine and carefully consider this, becoming focused and observant, regarding his appearance and presence. Of your own volition, listen through his voice, and do not become rebellious against him, nor defiant towards him. And the word for that is marah. Do not become embittered or contentious. Do not be bewildered or distressed regarding him, vexed or grieved. From mari, to be rebellious, and mara, to be contentious. Or you will cause him to choose to respond in kind, because otherwise he will not tolerate your rebellion. This is because Yahweh's personal and proper name is within his inner nature, and that's Shemot 23:21. So Yisrael will experience this bitterness of the gravity of their rebellion, like they did so long ago at Mara, which is Strong's H4843, and Mariba, contentious complaining. And similar to that journey during the first week of Matsah, on day 6, representative of Yom Kippurim, Moshe threw a branch in the Mayem Mara, bitter waters, and the water became sweet for them to drink. And after being tested there, Yahweh cut a covenant with Yisrael, and they journeyed together to Elim, which means upright pillar of the ram. It's plural of Eil. There in peace with God, they camped beside an oasis with 12 springs and 70 palm trees, representative of the 70 days a year we are invited to meet with Yahweh during his Moed Mikre, which is feast and Shabbats. So, on the feast of Matzah, we are instructed to eat matzah, bread from which bitterness is removed, for 7 days, just as it is Dod's work on Matzah that drains the bitterness between God and the family. So we're going to read Kara 23:6, and during the 15th day of this same month is the festival feast of unyeasted bread, to approach Yahweh. 7 days you shall eat bread without yeast. In the first month, on the 14th day at sundown, you should consistently consume bread without yeast, as an enduring witness, until sunset on the 21st day of the month. And because the emphasis of this podcast is to count from the 14th to the 21st, is a literal 7 days. There is no 8th day. This includes Pesach. There is a reason there is no 8th day at Matzah. We see the 8th day come into the equation with Sukkah because we'll be going into eternity at the commencement of Sukkah, not at the end of Matzah. And thank goodness, because none of us would be making it who are here now, since the fulfillment of Matzah took place back in 33 CE. And I've demonstrated all of this on the Torah chronology chart. Moshe was on the mountain celebrating Shabuw'ah with Yahweh exactly 50 days after Matzah and exactly 49 days after Bikuwrym. So there is no room to move Bikuwrym to another day. There is no room to start counting from any other day than the 3rd day of Matzah coinciding with Bikuwrym. And really, to divorce those concepts from each other is to miss the meaning of the Bikuwrym and what he's done for all of us.
That's
so, Kirk, I don't know if you have any thoughts on Matzah before I go on to Bikuwrym.
I've grappled with that a little bit myself because you hear different things, but no, 7 makes total.
Yahweh gave us the literal count. He says in the Torah from 14 to 21. So it's like when people start telling me about the 8th day, it's just like I don't have the energy to argue with you. And Yahweh, like I said, it's a fail-safe. If it's 50 days after Matzah and 49 days after Bikuwrym, there is no way you can move Bikuwrym around and then say it's 49 days after that because it still has to be 50 days after Matzah too.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure both. Do what?
This, instead of arguing, this is your rebuttal right here. So
All right. So on Bikuwrym, before we get to Shabuw'ah, because this is where the bull is first introduced, so it's important to set the foundation before we get to Shabuw'ah. There should be for you all 2 young bulls to thrive and be productive, ben par, to encourage being perceptive, contemplative, and discerning, seeking out and considering the available information, and then responding appropriately, bakar, and 1 lamb, the capable and protective leader of the flock, representing the framework of the doorway, as well as 7 to affirm the promise, male adolescent lambs to overcome being controlled and subjugated, kebez, each a year old, perfect, without defect, to completely fulfill the promise to purify. This is Bamidbar 28:19. And I'm going to jump to, let me go down and see where, Kara 23:13 next. Therefore, his sacrificial offering is a double portion for a 10-fold enrichment and empowerment of the purified grain. Combined with the oil, it is associated with the maternal manifestation of God's light to approach Yahweh, serving as a means to become acceptable and draw near spiritually through reconciliation, along with a drink offering which is poured out on it of wine, a 4th part of the unit of measure. Kirk, can you imagine why we would pour wine out on bread? I mean, it doesn't sound great at first, but there is a reason.
Far away. What is it?
All right. So Yahweh is serving a double portion of bread here, representing, it's actually grain, double portion of grain. Okay. Olive oil and a 4th of a poured out measure of wine, 2 young bulls, a ram, and 7 one-year-old lambs at his table on Bikuwrym. While it's suggested to approach with the sacrifices of 2 young bulls for the 2 lifetimes of this young and curious bull during the wave offering, we only wave our bread with lamb, because it is through Dode acting as Asaph, the one gathering treasures into the storehouse, that we are raised up to Yahweh. And these 2 bulls represent 2 lifetimes of the same man, benefiting from Dode's role on Bikuwrym. The young, curious bull grows into a very large and powerful, virile and frustrating bull by Shabuw'ah. If the lamb is a man, so are the other animals. This man can be none other than Yada, and there will be 2 appearances of the bull in time, enabling us to thrive and be productive, and Daniel 12 talks about this, so if you don't believe it, go read it.
No, I thought
the bulls are young. Yeah, I shouldn't say believe. If you don't trust it, go read it. It's there in plain English at yadayah.com, Daniel 12. So the bulls are young because these are immature and curious, and they are still learning and being productive, ben par. With plenty of room to grow, the bull will encourage us to be perceptive, contemplative, and discerning. Because of the first life of the young bull, we have sought out valuable information he revealed in association with the lamb. Yada is the goy that has responded appropriately, and bulls are commonly associated with goy. When this bull appears again on Shabuw'ah, he is no longer young and curious. At that point, he will be fully grown and frustrating. While the ram is clearly Dode without question, the 7 young lambs represent 7 moed, which we engage annually. That's why they're 1 year old. The moed literally serve the purpose of kebez, preventing us from being controlled and subjugated, because of the promise to purify and perfect us through them, liberating us from man's schemes and even death itself. So we're going to talk about the wine, oil, and grain of Bikuwrym. This is Kara 23:12, and then you should act with regard to this day. raising and waving on your behalf the sheaf of gathered grain, along with the perfect lamb, a year old, to rise up to approach Yahweh. Therefore, his sacrificial offering is a double portion for a tenfold enrichment and empowerment of the purified grain. So less bread flour with the hulls removed, revealing the inner pristine kernel, distinguished from whole grain, inclusive of its impurities, indicative of saved souls. Combined with the oil, it is associated with the maternal manifestation of God's light to approach Yahweh, serving as a means to become acceptable and drawn near spiritually through reconciliation, along with the drink offering, which is poured out on it of wine, a fourth part of the unit of measure. And this represents Dod's life being poured out so that the bread can rise with Ruach Kodesh. That's what the wine is for. And the double portion represents a second life granted to all immortal souls. And I do have a theory about the tenfold enrichment. Might be slightly radical for Yada's perception, so we'll get into that another time. But I do hesitate to talk too much about wine because Yada and I do have a fundamental difference on the meaning of the wine in this menu. Bikuwrym is the only feast that Yahweh asks for wine to be served, and I don't see it associated in any way with lamb's blood, which Yahweh instructed for us to burn on Pesach. And in Ezekiel, we see during the Feast of the Beast, Hasatan fantasizes about serving Dod's blood. So I think the wine represents redemption, cost, and purchase price of Adam, ruddy red, and of Jacob, the bloody grub. And the reason I say that is found in Korah 23:14. It says, as a result, you should not eat regular bread, which is dishonorable and stunts your potential for growth, or red grapes from the vineyard. That is wa carmel, the produce of an orchard, explicitly crimson red grapes, from carmel, crimson red, and karem, vines and vineyard. And to me, the wine points to the redemption of Jacob through the crushing of Dod, who is the first fruits of the vine, and the Bekor of Bikuwrym, which would make clear the instruction not to eat fresh grapes. Yahweh talks a great deal about Dod and his vineyard, and it's my personal opinion that the grapevine represents the family of Yehuda, and I think Yisra'el is represented by the olives. Yada may have a different take on this for you. But regardless, Yada has demonstrated over and over that Yahweh likes to work with people. And if Dod is the fruit of the vine, the oil is the product of individuals provided by Ruach Kodesh. There are only two people I know of who are associated with the preparation, gathering, and pressing of olives, in addition to being presented as olive trees before the menorah. These men are Yada and Elia. And quite coincidentally, it is Yada and Elia with whom we must approach on Shabuw'ah, Taruw'ah, and on Yom Kippurim, serving there as the bull and goat. Zechariah 13:8 reports, and it shall come to exist throughout the land, prophetically declares Yahweh, the portion that is 2/3 shall be cut off and eliminated, perishing, and 1/3 will be the remnant spared and preserved of them. I will come to be included among this 1/3. In the fire I will purge and refine them, perfecting them by removing their impurities, making them treasured and flawless, as one refines silver which is highly desired, all while examining them, verifying their genuineness, as one assesses the authenticity of gold. And in Yeshayah 17, we see in that specific day, it shall come to be that his defensive fortifications, speaking here of Yada, shall be abandoned and deserted, consistent with an occult presence among the religious and merchants of death. Then the uppermost branch of the olive will be completely deserted for a time, actually released for having accomplished the goal, which is to help restore the relationship because of the turning away of the children of Yisrael. This is really important, really, really important. The tree will be abandoned for a time. Why do you think that is, Kirk? Do you have any idea why the tree would be abandoned?
No.
It's because we're harvested. There won't be anybody here. Yeah, it makes sense now that we know what Shabuw'ah is, but before that, there was just no way to really understand what that looked like. And it's because he's accomplished the goal. He's gotten us all to Shabuw'ah, and we've all approached with him. So we're right on time, as Yada said. And that's such a beautiful thing, because thinking that we weren't on time and we were all making it by the skin of our teeth on Taruw'ah was a little terrifying. You know, this is so much better. Yeah. So Yada will be harvested with us according to Daniel 12, and the tree will be deserted for a time after accomplishing that goal. Yeshayah 17:9. Then, after this harvest, then there will be appalling desolation and stupefying ruin, even astonishing defoliation of the trees and plant life, leaving these places ravaged and temporarily uninhabitable. So this is after the two-state solution is signed. This is after the Shabuw'ah Harvest, which takes place the day the Treaty of Many is enacted, setting off a chain reaction of very undesirable events for Israel. Sure. Now in Yeshayah 40, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We know that Yada will return. And it says, a voice urges, read and recite, choosing to be called out and be welcomed. So I asked, what should I read and recite? Every proclamation of the Basar, the herald, is a place to dwell, which is entirely loving, providing all of the benefits of the relationship, akin to a gleaming flower blossoming while spreading across an open terrain. This word, blossoming, this gleaming flower, it's tsyts. This is the root word of tsyts. And if you look, I've published an article on Shamar Torah about this. The tsyts actually serve to remind you, Yisra'el, that a man is coming, a goy, associated with the color which is connected to Yom Kippurim, which is blue, the same color that tsyts are to this day, to remind you to hang on until the end of time, not to get twisted up in your own thinking, because he will untwist everything that has been twisted for you. The tsyts that Jews wear, which is those little tassels on the end of their garment, are supposed to remind them of Yada. And instead, the rabbis have forced you to wear kosher ones that are bleached white, stripping the connection away from Yada. And it's just all for show. So I thought that was incredible when I found it, and there's an article about it on shamartorah.com. Anyway, this dwelling place, it's cool. Craig is far more important than people have, I think, realized. We're just starting to realize how important he is. By the way, we have about 5 minutes of live broadcasting. After that, we'll be recording, and you'll be able to listen to the archive at our website, yadayah.com. Go to the podcast section, and there's also archives on the YouTube channel, which Stephen, I want to give him a shout-out. Please go like and interact with the videos he has created. He's put tons of time into that, and it would be really helpful for him if we could all do that. All right, so going back to Yeshayah 40, this dwelling place will be gone for a while. The blossoming and gleaming flower, tsyts, will be treated with contempt at this moment, because the Spirit of Yahweh blows like the wind, dispersing and driving away forcibly through him. Insightfully, the abode is of the family, because the word of our God stands forever. You know, when people tell me they don't like Craig, that he's frustrating, that they can't stand to listen to his voice, I know they're being driven away by him. That they're not being called, obviously, because that's his role, is to turn people away that aren't supposed to make it. He's going to drive them away because the Spirit of Yahweh is working through him. So he's supposed to be frustrating, and this is a consequence that Yisrael wasn't available for Yahweh to work with. So now they have to tolerate this goy traveling around like a big old bull in a china shop to their traditions and their lifestyles, that they don't want to hear it. Upon the elevated and exalted mountain, ascend. Proclaim the good news as a herald of Zion, the sign posted along the way for you to approach. Powerfully and with authority, choose to raise your voice as the Basar herald, bringing this message to Jerusalem. Lift it on high and choose to proclaim, fear not, nor be intimidated or apprehensive, cities of Yehuda. Behold, look up now and see your God. There is so much we could discuss about this, but we're going to plow through to the Shabuw'ah menu for the sake of time. And okay. I just encourage you all to go read these passages and understand who Yada actually is and what he's actually going to be doing. This is really intense, and I want anyone listening to this to recognize that while Yada is rejected right now, once you are familiar with him and you've rejected him, that's good. That's what we want. We want you to hear this. And then we want you to recognize him when he comes back. All right, so on to Shabuw'ah. You should all come bringing out of your homes 2 loaves of bread as an ascending wave offering. So before it was 2 packaged grain, omers. Now it's 2 loaves of bread that have been cooked and prepared. A double portion for a 10-fold enrichment and empowerment. This double portion represents souls that are getting a second life. They should be comprised of fine flour, soleth, which we saw in the Bikuwrym menu, baked with yeast, chametz, fermented and embittered, puffed up by the culture of the fungus, for firstborn children to approach Yahweh. So in Shabuw'ah, Yahweh is directly correlating this to the Bikuwrym menu. You should approach, coming closer, taking responsibility above and beyond the loaves of bread, attacking the problem by dining with 7, conveying the promise of being perfected, becoming unblemished and innocent as children, by way of the lambs each year as the means to renewal, and 1 bull representing that which is frustrating and divisive, broken and ineffectual, a young male in the morning, to encourage being perceptive, contemplative, and discerning, seeking out and considering the available information, and then responding appropriately. And 2 transformative rams representing the upright pillar and doorway, even the leader of the flock. They will exist as a means to become acceptable and to ascend to Yahweh. Their gift is offered freely and is poured out on their behalf by the feminine manifestation of the fiery light, a uniquely welcoming and pleasing spirit of acceptance, reconciling the relationship to approach Yahweh. You should prepare and provide 1 Seder Goat for going astray and 2 lamb sons, a year old each, serving as a sacrificial offering to reconcile the relationship. We're going to go through these one by one.
Okay.
The first item we have is 2 loaves of leavened bread as an ascending wave offering, a double portion. These represent the double inheritance, a gift of 2 lives, passing over and out of a lower dimension. As a second born following the Bikuwrym, we emerge into a 10-fold empowerment and growth. These mental pictures and riddles to be solved bring to mind the rapid growth of newborn babies after they've successfully passed over. By nature of calling Dode firstborn, and from the lessons of twin birthrights in Torah, there is an implication of second-born twin children who follow behind the Bikuwrym. Because of Dode paving the way as a firstborn son who opens up the womb, the second-born twin follows through with ease. And we look at Isaiah 42:14 or Yeshayahu. Yahweh cries out like a woman in labor. So the labor metaphor is appropriate. Yahweh made that connection, not me.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good.
Yeah. So in Daniel 12, yeah, it's cool, right? And Bikuwrym is born, and Shabuw'ah and Bikuwrym are connected. So it's like he opened the door and we're following through right after. And if you look in the Torah at how many times twins are swapped out, or like there's this weird emphasis on twins in the Torah. I shouldn't say weird, but there is an emphasis on twins.
There's about 3 sets, that I know of,
Yeah, so in Daniel 12, we read about a massive end-time harvest that includes yeast. In this large ingathering, all eternal souls are collected at the same time, which just so happens to be in the lifetime of Yada. Some of these souls are going to eternal separation from Yahweh, and some to eternal life with Yahweh. These religiously embittered souls will rise to judgment, separated like chaff from grain, and ultimately will be thrown into eternal separation as their inheritance. So I think the chametz does not just represent overlooked corruption of the covenant family, because that's been removed for us on Matsah. It doesn't even exist at this point.
Yes.
Rather, this portrays that the embittered souls collected for judgment and eternal separation will be gathered at the same time as we are harvested. That's huge because we've been looking for this big harvest that Shabuw'ah was supposed to be, and in 33C, we don't have any record of that. Pentecost has nothing to do with Shabuw'ah at all. It's complete nonsense, and nobody even knew who Dode was to capitalize on his arrival at that point in time. There wasn't thousands of souls waiting to be harvested. And I also think, why would Yahweh do a big old harvest in the middle, in the spring feast? I mean, that's not even the right time for a summer harvest, and Shabuw'ah is a summer harvest. So that's what got me thinking, maybe we don't know. So here's Daniel 12, 1 through 4. And so at that time, Mikael, the one who validates this is Yada, verifying these connections to the Almighty, who is the representative of the anointed king while serving the leader's family, will have an important role in nourishing the growth while promoting through amplification to empower your family's children, taking a stand, present and accountable, appointed and supported. Then there will be a time of trouble beyond which has ever existed from a Gentile nation prior to this time. So we see that Mikael is present, and then the time of trouble begins. The time of trouble started in 2023, so we are in this point. So during this period of this time of trouble, while this Mikael is present, your people will be saved, everyone rescued from harm's way and delivered, who is found written in the book. This is Shabuw'ah. This is when we are all delivered, in the lifetime of Yada and during the time of Yaakov's trouble. And many important and infamous individuals of those who are asleep in an altered state of consciousness in the dust of the earth will be awakened, some of these to the restoration of life everlasting, growing forevermore, and others to eternal scorn and shame, insults and reproach, accusations and censure, for having been abhorrent and appalling in goading others in a repulsive and loathsome manner. So, just like 2 loaves of Shabuw'ah, there are 2 types of souls being harvested here. Both are eternal, but in both loaves there is chametz, embittered souls, who are gathered at the same time as the soleth, purified grain of covenant souls. Therefore, this is Daniel 12:3. The circumspect with insight, those who are intelligent and properly instructed, discerning and discriminating, demonstrating the capacity to understand, will become prominent, obtaining a high status, being respected among heavenly beings, shining brightly while enlightening and admonishing, similar to the light of the expansive universe, such that they will be greatly valued for the numerous worthy individuals who will be vindicated for being right, becoming like stars, as eternal and restoring witnesses forevermore. I mean, this is exactly what Yahweh told Abraham would happen. Look up and see, understand if you can, that your descendants will be like the stars. I mean, this is all the greats that are going to be collected with us, that have been packaged and prepared for transport on Bikuwrym and are collected at Shabuw'ah finally. So Yashaya, everybody's going to be there. As for you, Daniel, seal up this testimony, making the message secure while precluding access to the meaning hidden within the words, and place a stamp and signature on the book until before the time of the restoring witnesses runs out. And I don't know if old Daniel had a choice. I don't think he got any of this.
No, I looked around going, what?
Yeah, he didn't even know why he was in exile. Poor guy.
Yeah.
So this book of Daniel was unsealed in 2023 by Yada. And recently somebody wrote to us and said that Yahweh never covers and conceals things. That's just not true. Yahweh told Yisra'el that he speaks in riddles to be solved and mental pictures. And here he deliberately precluded the understanding of the book of Daniel until right now. And last week, Yada told us about receiving mental pictures from Yahweh in response to an inquiry about the remaining timeline. And I suspect that that's because we have 2 years until the harvest in 2026. After that, Yahweh's presence is removed from the earth for a time until the time of the restoring witnesses, which is in 2030. So we pick back up in 2030. Adding 2 years to that, we get to 2032. And Yowbels are always a singular count of either 50 or 1. So I suspect that 2033 is his 1. So that's 2 plus 2 plus 1. Yahweh also spoke in riddles to Yada. When Yada asked him where he thought he was going on Taruw'ah, which we now know isn't anywhere because his harvest appointment is Shabuw'ah. So pay attention to these details and use your bin ability to make the connections necessary to understand.
Good point. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Where are you going, Noah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can just see, like, it's interesting. Like, Yahweh does communicate. It's just different than we're used to. His ways aren't our ways, and his thoughts aren't our thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Wow.
Seriously.
Well,
I'm going to skip through some of these kind of quickly because Yada's covered some of them. The 7 1-year-old lambs, that's in Kara 23:18, and that is the how of harvesting. It represents the 7 steps into Yahweh's storehouse. That all the feasts are connected, progressive, and interwoven, and none of the benefits of any of these feasts would be possible without Yahweh's lamb. So Yada has talked about that extensively in the Shabuw'ah chapters. The third item is 1 bull, Echad Parar, representing that which is frustrating and divisive, broken and ineffectual, Kara 23:18, a young male in the morning to encourage being perceptive, contemplative, and discerning, seeking out and considering the available information, and then responding appropriately. The bull represents that which is split apart from Yahweh, that which is frustrating, violating, and divided. Yisra'el is currently divided from Yahweh, and so an offering has been provided to repair the breach and restore this division. And to do so, Yisra'el has to accept an approach with this bull. The item is listed third because in order to bring the grain into the storehouse, the bull has to repair the breach so that the ingathering will be accepted by Yahweh. And that is exactly what Yada has done. In Kara 16:2, Yahweh says, "Indeed, I will appear and be visible within a cloud above the mercy seat, Kipporeth. In this, Aaron will come to the set-apart place with a bull from the herd for being wrong and missing the way, and a lamb to rise." So we have to approach with the lamb and the bull. But the lamb is for us to rise, which is what Dod did. Aaron should approach with the bull for being wrong and having missed the way for his benefit, and for the purpose of reconciliation through this for himself and for his house and family. He should take the life of the bull as the resolution for having been wrong for his benefit. And he should obtain some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the face of the mercy seat on the eastern side, the beginning of a new day. Then toward the front of the mercy seat, which is the place of reconciliation, he should sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. So why is Aaron approaching with this bull? It's because in Zechariah, Yahweh promised to restore the Lawi to work in his Bayeth. But first, they have to accept they were wrong, which is the role of the goat. While approaching with this frustrating bull, they have to get the right garments for the job again. And this is all in Zechariah 3 and Kara 16:4. And since no one in Israel conducted themselves correctly and were thus unable to work with Yahweh, a lone goy had to be brought in as a consequence of Yisrael going astray. This is an extremely bitter and frustrating pill for Yisrael, who are extremely territorial over the Torah, although they have squandered their role with it. But I happen to know just the guy. He's an early riser, and he's going to be a witness on Yom Kippurim, so it's not hard to connect the dots as to the identity of this bull. We're going to skip the 4th item. It's 2 rams, Shemayim, Ayil, and these represent the upright pillar and doorway. This is absolutely Matsah and Bikuwrym. This is Dod passing through the door and opening it for us. And you open a door with a key, which is our Taruw'ah arm. So it's very interesting. But we're going to go on to the Seder Goat, and after that I think we're going to be pretty much out of time. The 5th item is 1 male Seder Goat, Echad Sair Ez, and it says you should prepare and provide 1 Seder or scapegoat for going astray. And also one male goat to cleanse iniquity, providing reconciliation for you. That's Bamidbar 28:22. And in Korah 16:15, we see this goat again, that Aaron should prepare the goat to provide the means to resolve iniquity and pardon sin for going astray, for the benefit of the people, and return with its blood toward the house and through the curtain, and do with its blood as you did with the blood of the bull, sprinkling it upon the mercy seat and toward the front of the mercy seat. These are all depictions of Elia. His life stunningly mirrors a goat-like personality, one who dresses in hairy goat clothes and who was stubborn, irritating to Israel. He lived up in the mountains alone, like a mountain goat. He is the one Yisrael is expecting to come and whose presence will be to support the bull as a consequence for their going astray. They are going to choke on it, but they have to eat this bull. Ironically, and Elia might get annoyed at me for this one, but bull wranglers use nanny goats to calm down angry bulls. So he may not appreciate that a whole lot, but I just thought it was funny. Anyway, in all seriousness, Malachi has something super important to say about Eliah's role. He says, "Behold, I myself will send to you Eliah the prophet before the coming arrival of this exceedingly important and awesomely inspiring day of Yahweh. Then he will restore the thinking and inclinations of the fathers for the children, and the thinking and inclinations of the children to their fathers. Or otherwise I will arrive and inflict the land, striking it, because it is so disfigured it appears like the sea, Haram, mutilated and split apart into the sea, serving as a metaphor for Goyim, doomed and excluded." Eliah, his full title was Eliah the Tishbi, which means my God is my recourse, and he is there to support Israel in accepting the price for going astray, and accepting this bull who facilitates the relationship to the lamb. This is not to be mistaken for the female scapegoat in Shemoth. That was, as Yada has discussed, representative of the soul of Dod, as souls are feminine. And that's a whole other conversation. But that goat was feminine. Mm-hmm. This is a male seir who represents becoming aware of being caught up in the whirlwind of rebellion against the shepherd. And rebellion is the very crime for which Yahweh has provided a redeemer. Mizmor 19:13, freeing us from the crime of great rebellion. And rebelling against Dod is the unforgivable crime. I think there's only one seir goat here because Eliah was harvested by Yahweh in his first and only known life. In other places there are two goats, and they could be symbolic of his two arrivals on earth. Russ Baskin did a really stunning translation of 2 Kings, Melekym 2:1, and that can be found at shamartorah.com. I urge all of you to go check that out, because if you read it, you'll understand better why Seir is not demonic, but represents a whirlwind of Ruach Kadesh. And Eliah has something Yada doesn't. Eliah has been harvested before. And I think it's interesting that Yahweh is sending someone to help us understand, well, it will be in Taruw'ah, help Jews understand how to be harvested and how to find that acceptance with reconciliation with the lamb and the bull. So I'm going to skip down through that. Go read it at shamartorah.com. He was picked up by a strong and capable wind and taken to the heavens. So it's really of value to understand who Eliah was and what he is bringing to the table of Shabuw'ah for us all. And his relationship with Elisha, his student, was really sweet, actually. Eliah's constantly disparaged as this grumpy man, but he really was very kind and a loving individual, similar to Yada, who seems gruff, but is truly, when you get to know him and you're rational and reasonable, one of the most loving individuals that you and I know, Kirk, as we talked about earlier.
Well, you recall when people say that, I'm going, really?
Yeah, it's not the Yada I know.
No,
So going on, what I think I know in a synopsis is that Yada and Elia serve as witnesses, and what that means is that Dod is purchasing souls at Yom Kippurim, and they are signing it as witnesses. The Torah describes establishing everything by 2 witnesses, 2 or 3. So they are actual witnesses, and their lives have been dedicated to helping you, Yisra'el, as a gift, a free will offering. So comparing their roles and their lives to sacrifices is completely appropriate. Their lives have been sacrificed. They have spent their time, their livelihoods, all of it is a free will gift to help Yahweh. So coming to appreciate that, and you can, there's so much, like I said, to unpack, but the Torahless one wants to stop the daily sacrifices, and what people don't understand is that he's trying to stop the sacrifices of Yada and Elia guiding Yisra'el to Taruw'ah. We're not looking for a third temple with priests running it. That doesn't exist in our time. We don't have Kohen anymore. There is no temple. No. The daily sacrifice are those coming to Yada and Elia for information about Yahweh, that the Torahless one is going to make it illegal to associate with them. He's going to make it illegal to celebrate Pesach, and they're going to be labeled terrorists or whatever. He's outlawing them. So these are the sacrifices that Hashatan does not want you to have, Yisrael. He doesn't want the bull to get to you. He doesn't want the Dod to get to you. That's why they talk about in Ezekiel killing and eating Yada and Dod, because they are the sacrificial means to approach Yahweh.
Yeah. That's why there's that book. Why he did it. Yeah. Ezekiel has all that. Yeah. I get it. I just tough read, but yes. Yep.
Yeah, so this Shabuwah, my advice is to get familiar with Yahweh's menu. There are 4 feasts with menus. These are a plan and a map and a guideline through time that have been clearly laid out on Shulchan, the table of Yahweh. Learn them, understand them, accept them, and celebrate with them. And you can capitalize upon Shabuwah because we're supposed to count to get to Shabuwah. So I feel like this is the first year that as Covenant family, we will be approaching correctly with the full table spread before us. And that's really exciting for us these next 2 years, that we're on the right track and it's just getting better and better. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. Thank you for joining all of us. And Kirk, before we go, do you have anything you want to share?
Well, thank you for letting me be here. I was.
Are you kidding? I wouldn't do it without you.
Oh, no. Yes, you, because you know. But wow, this is stuff. Even though I've read a bunch of it in the last 2 days, this is marvelous. Yeah. Congratulations, this is great.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot to cram in, and I know this was sort of a data dump. I am writing this out and Coming Home Volume 4, which hopefully I get a little extra time with, because Craig's going to plow through like all of Questioning Paul in like 3 days, and I'm going to be stuck having just this little bit. But I'm excited and blessed to be able to be part of this. And I want to say thank you to everyone who helped me listen to me ramble about this and did a bunch of research, with me to bring this about. So happy Shabbat, as Craig says, to one and all. Yes. And I guess we'll see you next week. All right.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.